boys. It's day's end. I was busy today, so I'm a bit late with the video, and I don't know much. I don't have a huge amount of battery power left on this phone, so we'll run as long as we have power. So I'm very disturbed about developing situations in the world today. I'm really, I'm really in a bad way about current events and current things. When I heard the other day that Apatiania was invaded by Nunfornia, it really made me worried. I've been on the news non-stop, alt media and mainstream media, watching it non-stop. Poor Apatiania. I've changed my profile pic on social media to the flag of Apatiania, which is a picture of an empty sandwich bag and an empty Ziploc bag, and I want to support those people in Apatiania from Nunfornian aggression, and that president of Nunfornia, he's out of control. Cancer max strangulation. That cancer max strangulation. The president of Nunfornia, he's unhinged. I've replaced my Trump derangement syndrome with a cancer max strangulation derangement syndrome. I mean, I just think about he'll stop at nothing. He's out of control. He's an enemy of democracy, and when we stand by the people of Apitiania, we stand by democracy. We stand by freedom. And we've got to help those people. We've got to get our troops on the ground in Apitiania and send a message to Cancer Max Strangulation that this is as far as he's going to get. And and if it wasn't for the fact that my pension fund is being paid by mining assets within Nunfornia, I probably would want nuclear weapons used on Nunfornia to teach cancers, because they're not human, those people. They don't have the same values as the people here or in Apithania. I've never been to Apitiania. I know nothing about it. I've never met anyone from there. I just know that their flag is a Ziploc bag that's empty, and I've changed my profile picture to it. But I'm passionately devoted to these people. Justice for Apitiania. Pray for Apitiania. And, we don't stand up against Nunfornian aggression. The next country will be inconsequential land. Just think about that. You just think, imagine how people in inconsequential land are currently feeling right now, looking over the border at Apithania and knowing that just on the other side of the border are Nunfornian defence forces who walk through that country. Will they be next? Where do we stop them? Cancer max strangulation. If you get him and say, well, where does the beginning and the end of Nunfornian aggression end? And he'll laugh at you and say, the whole world. So we got to stop. We got to stop that. But we have to be careful, because my pension fund is tied up in Nunfornian mining operations. So, we can't nuke them. We should normally think about that. So we got to vote for politicians. And I've been watching the Enforced News Network all day, and all these experts on foreign policy talking about how dangerous cancer max strangulation and Nunfornia as an evil empire is. And I just I had my kids terrorized. It was like last week they were terrorized by coronavirus. Now I have the kids in the family terrorized by cancer max strangulation and Nunfornia. It's just pray for apathy land. Pray for Apitiania. Pray for Apitiania, and we need to get troops in on the ground in inconsequential land, just in case Cancer Max Strangulation tries to move his troops over the border out of Apiti land and into inconsequential land, because this has been keeping me up all night. And alt media, all I've been talking about is this, all these people, they say things like it's a holographic matrix and all is love. And, while that's true, all I can think about is the invasion of Apithania. That's all I can think about, because, namaste. So you see how fake your reality is. I was on, and I'm out of character now, by the way, for those of you who are like, who, have cannabis autism. I'm out of that now, okay? So I'm into regular reality now, as far as I can manage it. And you see how programmed you are. How any story could be made up about anything. And whether you're in mainstream or alt media, it's automatically assumed that it's true. Completely. And even if it is true completely, why do you care? Why does the situation in Central Europe, in Eastern Europe right now, matter to you more than putting food on the table or looking at making sure the kids are healthy, or, repairing the leaky tap in the kitchen? They're the immediate things in your life, not what's on the thing. Now, there's a painting group that I don't bother with it anymore because it's full of normies, and the Rona thing was going on. They were completely Ronificated. They were just, all going on about having getting their foghorn, leghorn, and all their other things, And I just was, there's some good artists on there, and I just like looking at the pictures. But the arts scene is just like the Hollywood or the music scene. It's full of like virtue signaling toss bags, and so they're all the same ones that like literally like a fucking switch, that had like stay home, wear a mask, all that stuff, save lives, save the NHS, save your local hospitals, whatever. And they all have now, like clockwork, a picture, the yellow and blue flag of Ukraine up on their profile pic, and they're all like saying things like, "I'm so upset about what's going on in the Ukraine. I'm so disturbed by what's going on. I couldn't sleep, so all I did last night was I painted in the colours of sunflowers because that's the national flower." And they actually think they're helping. They actually think they're actually doing something. But beyond all that stuff, the stupidity of this superficial virtual signaling, beyond all the madness of all that, this again, it started with the water bucket challenge. The water bucket challenge, you can follow those animals all the way through to today. The ones who did the water bucket challenge are the same ones who currently have a Ukrainian flag and all the other black squares and everything else in between. You can actually, they were an identifiable and specific population segment that was singled out for moments like this. And they're all the same. They're all like, they're just nothing inside them except bags of conditioned responses to what's on the TV and what's on social media. And they're awful people. They compensate for their nastiness by pretending to be on the side of good. And who's the side of good? What the TV told them this week. And I'm even shocked by some of the behaviour in alt media. People in alt media that I thought knew better are all going after Putin, saying that, Putin's the hostile aggressor, poor Ukraine. And then other ones are going, Putin's a hero. Well, none of those things are true. You have no stake in this. Unless you're in that country, or you have families in those countries, or you're in those you have no stake in this. Yeah, I know it affects our utility costs because Russia controls basically Europe's energy supply thanks to the Green parties in Germany and their demolition of, fossil fuel plants. And the same people involved in that are all own the gas company pipelines. It's criminal cartel beyond criminal cartel. But what do you care? It's like the last 2 years have been the greatest education ever. But anyone who's got through that and managed to remain, sanguine gnosis, and kept their life and their head together intact, and saw through the whole fiasco from beginning to end, lots of them are in a new place now. You can tell who's grown and who hasn't, and they're laughing at the news about what's going on in Eastern Europe. I'm laughing at it. I'm laughing at the hilarity of these like foreign events, foreign politics experts being whipped up on the media. These guys don't have a clue what's going on either. They're just all making it up as they go along. It's all fantasy. It's all wag the dog stuff. And even if the worst elements of what they're saying is true, and Putin is as horrible as they say he is. They're making him out to be. What does it matter to you? What's it got to do with your life? Why do you care what goes on in North Korea? What's it to you? You don't live there. You don't have to worry about it. No, but they'll make sure that you incorporate that into your life, so all your energy is poured into it. So energy that you should be using to grow your charisma, to grow your creative self, it's poured into that. You see it all. You'll see that now. Bands will now start forming it. Like Ukraine aid, something like that will be suggested. Or those things all flop under. Those things all never happen now, and it's always the same people. Coldplay, those kinds of things like Ariana Grande. They're always the same people, and I mean, a big defining moment for me was the Manchester One concert. I know I keep coming back to it, but the bodies had barely been counted at the Manchester bombing arena when a concert, an all-star celebrity concert, was organised for that, and people were like, "Oh, we're going to have like all these bands. Oh, it's going to be wonderful." And yet there were families whose daughters were young teenage daughters were blown to pieces by a bomb, and had to identify their bodies in the morgue and stuff like that. But all somehow the excitement of having a concert, Manchester One, was more important to them because they were told it was to be more important than the actual human tragedy that had occurred. And also, it was to make sure that we know seeking revenge, and make sure that no one says, "Why are all these people we brought into this country blowing up our teenage kids?" Not all these people. Some of these people come into our country blowing up our teenage kids. That was you were not to think that. You were to go about, we're all together as one in Manchester. And I can remember, like, when that thing was going on and that when it was being broadcast live, I was on social media saying, "Do you not find this a bit distasteful?" And you'd have normies saying things to me, "You are a sick, sick, sick person. How could you be against this?" And there's, Ariana Grande on stage going, "Yeah, hand icicle, ride the dick bicycle," to like teen, and they're all, on the bodies of dead kids. And of course, Liam Gallagher with his orange jacket, bringing a sense of salvation and meaning to the normies' lives. And I'm like watching this going, they can do anything they want with the normies. They're such worthless animals now. They're worthless animals of no value. And the Georgia Guidestones, whatever that says, I'm down with it. These things are not useful to the human race, and they're the majority of. And this is on the cusp of when the NPC thing started becoming popular out of Reddit and stuff like that, and Fortran, and yeah, I mean, and then here they are again. They actually think by changing, putting up a hashtag about Ukraine or changing their flag, that they're helping. Just like they think that watching the Manchester One thing was actually going to bring those kids back to life who are blown to bits. This is what we're dealing with out there. This is the world. You have to prepare yourself to deal with these people. And you have to be remembered that in amongst them, there are fine people as well who've been brainwashed. But they're a small percentage. The majority of them are not even human at this point. I don't know. I swear to God, I'm on this planet. I'm convinced an invasion of body snatchers has happened. And it happened after, I've been saying till I'm blue in the face. 9/11 fractured reality. 9/11 did something to reality. Now, reality is attempting to repair itself. And hence why we have the alt scene and people who are wise to this stuff, and people like you watching this and the tribes, and even noticing things that are strange in reality, like Mandela effects and stuff like that, and just the strangeness of reality as it's happening before us. It's trying to repair itself, to fix itself, to correct itself. And this correction is happening slowly, but it's happening nonetheless. I mean, that's what the tribe is. We are people we are like pre-9/11 people, and we're still in that. We're back that we still have the same level of consciousness we had prior to 9/11, but we're wiser and smarter. We are aware, but we're aware of the lie, and this is the kind of thing of knowing nothing. Like these people, look, you get the information, you see the information. I don't go actively looking online for information about what's happening in Eastern Europe. Just like I actually did take a big interest in the coronavirus. I read a lot of like medical stuff and papers on that, and very early on just came to the conclusion it's a bad seasonal flu that kills elderly people, and most people will survive it. Very early on, I came to that conclusion, which is you don't need to get the needle graft. Very early on, I came to that. And but in regard, because that was actually something I could study and look at and quantify around me. But regarding what's going on in Eastern European, I can't look out my window and see, for instance, like during the Rona thing, It's a pandemic, and you look outside your window, and no one's dropping dead in the streets. Everyone you know has survived. No one's getting sick, or if they are, they're getting a flu, and getting over it. Otherwise, you could quantify that around you. You could quantify the control system by not being able to go on holiday, by all the restrictions and the measures. You could quantify that because they impacted upon your life. But regarding something going on in Ukraine, how can you quantify that? I look out this window here. Is there anything outside this window that's in my immediate view between here and the village that is telling me that there's something going down in Ukraine? There's not. It's not there. Which means that if I didn't have, because I'm bombarded by it on social media, you can't get away from it. But if you didn't have it, if you didn't know about it, you would be off reading a book, doing something else. You wouldn't know, you wouldn't care. There's conflicts that happen in places all over the world at this moment, and the media doesn't cover them. So you're not changing your profile pic. I'm not saying you, but I mean the average piece of meat out there, meat column. You're not changing your profile pic or doing anything like that because they're not aware of it. Like I said, this title of the videos is the Zen of Knowing Nothing. And so there you are, people I thought knew better, all fired up, watching all the channels about what's going on in Ukraine, and all having these opinions. And what are the opinions based on? No, I don't know. Is Putin out there? Is the Ukrainian, gangster operation out there? All I do know about the Ukraine is, and it's verifiable fact, is that it's the deep state's criminal operations center, particularly for banking, and people like the Clinton Foundation and the Bidens have all their money tied up there, and that's why they're personally interested. But that's also why they're not going to attack Russia, because if Russia switches off the gas going into Western Europe, particularly Germany, and even here Ireland, we're screwed. We're screwed. With just this time of the year as well. So it's all a circus. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all fantasy. Now that's not to say that the people who are soldiers and stuff who are dying right now in attacks and planes, that's not happening. But if you didn't know about it, would it affect you? And the answer is no. So there's a beautiful thing in knowing nothing about these things. Like I said, there's conflicts and horrible things happening all over the world. For instance, you have a situation like there was a horrible murder of a young woman in Ireland recently, and everyone thought that their daughters were going to be next because the media sexed it all up and to make it sound like women in Ireland were not safe. It's one of the safest countries in the world. We have one of the lowest crime rates on earth. And our murder rate is nothing. It's a very, very safe country. Yet people are terrified now that they think their daughters are going murder when they're out drugging. Not to undermine the death of that young woman, but that's just to show you. And all these creepy sort of like, micropenis types putting up their thing saying, I respect women, I'm a woman respecter. They all showed themselves for what they were, the pathological scumbags. They all were. And but if that just think about it. If that women get murdered all over the world all the time, women are murdered by Islam as part of Sharia law. And there you have the head of the Islamic Council of Ireland writing an article in the Irish Times, condescendingly lecturing Irish men on how they should treat their women. The women are incredibly safe in this country, but they've always used that here. I remember during the Lisbon campaign, was it? Yeah, the Lisbon campaign. There's a picture of a poster, and I think it was Fine Gael, the current party in power, with a woman, or the Greens it might have been, with a woman looking forlorn like this. And it says, I'm safer in Europe. So like if we didn't vote for the Lisbon Treaty, women would have been beaten to death by Irish men and stuff like that. This is what goes on. This is like literally, if you didn't know, you'd be in a much better place. The bliss of ignorance is such a powerful thing. And it's, of course, you can't ignore what goes on because it's put in your face, but you can choose whether to be emotionally connected to it or not. You can, when people like us are confronted by things like what's going on in Eastern Europe right now, we have to be like a heart surgeon or a brain surgeon. You go in there and you don't think about, if I make a mistake or something goes wrong, this person's going to die and it's going to upset the family. You simply have to be cold and analytical because you cannot change the outcome of some tragedy that might happen. You can only do your best. In the same ways, and some of the most compassionate and kind men you will ever meet are military generals who send young men to die in battles. Now, you could say to yourself, how could they send men to die in battles and be kind and loving? It's because they switch off the part that does that, and they do their job. But that doesn't mean they don't have compassion for the soldiers and stuff. In fact, the greatest generals are the ones who, Napoleon, he puts the welfare of his own troops ahead of the actual thing. That's why the Grand Army loved him. He didn't send them mindlessly into battle. He actually took care of them and made sure that the casualties were less. And they were well fed and everything. And that's why the French army, the Grand Army, until they were all obliterated at Waterloo by the Prussians and the British, and they loved Napoleon because he took care of them. He cared for them. And that's completely different than the Duke of Wellington. When the Battle of Waterloo was over, someone said to Lord Wesley, they said, we've won a great victory today, and our troops have fought bravely. And what did he say? Scum of the earth. That's what he called the troops who died at Waterloo. Scum of the earth. Duke of Wellington, Lord Wesley. Where, Napoleon had a genuine empathy and connection with his troops. That's why he was so successful. That's why when the kings of France sent them to arrest him, he stood before them and told them how much they meant to him, and the French army said they cheered him on and made him their leader again, and went after the French king instead, after he came back from the first exile. That's charisma on a powerful scale, but you don't get charisma unless people can look into your eyes and see there's a kindness there. There's you can see the soul of someone when looking into their eyes. You can see a kindness, and you can feel it. And it doesn't matter if there's a video I saw, I think it's a World War II, and it's just before D-Day, and it's General Patton talking to the men who are going to hit the beaches at Normandy, and he's being very friendly and cordial with them and laid back, but you can actually see that man is going through pain, and he's sending these fellas off to die, but he can't stop. He has to do it. He has his duty. It's just like in the Bhagavad Gita, fight Arjuna, fight. You have to do it. You fulfill your Dharma, but you don't do it with a sense of, unless you feel a sense of purpose. But when you are obsessed with something going on in another part of the world that you have no connection to, you are in a Dharma. You are not fulfilling your Dharma because you have no direct connection. So you've no point to put intention into action. So intention is wasted, charisma dies, and you fail as a person. And all that energy is sucked in by the wickedness of the zeitgeist, by the powers that be, sucked in. And that's why, people from the tribe are meeting each other all over the world now, and created great bonds of love and friendship, because they've diverted themselves away from the horrors and the lies of the machinations of the greater thing, the mirage of the handlers of the planet, and put it into focus of just being with good people and finding one another, and finding, even if they're alone, knowing that you're not going to be sucked into it. Because I can tell you something, there's been a whole thing in life. What's the key to happiness? What's the key to happiness? And a lot of it is not giving a fuck. Now, that doesn't mean you don't give a fuck about your loved ones when they get sick or have problems, or your friends, but they're the only ones. I've had people say to me, over the years, again, a message from some fucking idiot online, and he'll say something like, well, this is all very good, you talking about this, that, and the other, Thomas Sharon, but what are you actually going to do to make things better? And I say, I'm not going to do fuck all. And they said, what are you going to do to make people's lives and, make the world a better place? I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck about you. I don't give a fuck about anyone else, other than if something bad happens to you, you'll definitely get my compassion. But otherwise, the only people I give a fuck about are myself and the people I love, my closest friends, my nearest and dearest. And that's it. And, the ones in my immediate world that I can actually help when they're going through bad times, even if it's only talking to them online, the ones I'm closely connected to. I can't heal the world. And what they do is this destroys your charisma and destroys your creativity because you spend all your time worrying about things you can't change. You spend all your time worrying about things you cannot absolutely change, you know, and therefore all that energy, all that emotions, all that power, all that creativity is in a dharma and it's wasted. And you're not fulfilling it. You're not fighting to make intention into worthy action. You're fighting to give your attention away as psychic energy to the forces who are bleeding you dry. Bleeding you dry. And, you have like the likes of John Lennon, give peace a chance, while he was battering his women up, and things like imagine no possessions while they're living. These are all hints out there. We all one world, one love. That doesn't exist. This whole when you hear the thing one world, one love, you're dealing with communists because that's where all that comes from. The communists wanting a one world controlled state, and they'll use things like superficial platitudes and all this mushy schmaltz and everything to make it come into reality. But it won't. It doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve you. The tribe is the future. When I say the tribe, I don't mean just our tribe. I mean all tribes. The tribe is the future. Your tribe begins. The tribe begins with you and your immediate loved ones and the people you care about most in your life, even if they're only online. That's your immediate circle, and you worry about them, and you all take care of each other, help each other out. Okay, and through a constellation of tribes, we will have a better engagement with reality, where there's no bliss, there's no nirvana, there's no salvation day. But what you can do is you can make life a lot more pleasant, this journey in your own microsphere, as a micronaut or something. That's a good term. I like that, micronauts. As a micronaut, away from the macronauts. In fact, that's the way I'm going. That's my new code word. Micronaut is you and your own dharmic space, protected and tribal space, and macronaut is the psychopathic control grid. So becoming a micronaut and moving away from the macronauts will give you an easier life. It won't create bliss. It won't create abundance. It could, it could, but it will make your life a lot better. If you're sitting there worried about what's going on in Ukraine or North Korea or God knows anywhere else, and you cannot directly affect or have no emotional connection through no family or anything like that there, then you're wasting on your life on what telescopic philanthropy was created for a reason. It was created so you don't see the immediate problem beneath your feet. When Charles Dickens spoke about the telescopic philanthropists who were worried about what was going on to the poor people of Africa when they had people in the East End of London starving and dying of cholera at their feet, it became the distraction. Remember, it's always the distraction. Look over here, don't look down there. Telescopic philanthropists are looking at people over. It's just like the whole thing, like Micheál Martin here. He's determined to save the borders and sovereignty of Ukraine. Meanwhile, he said we will have no talk of backward nationalism in this country, and we've opened our borders up. Ireland doesn't even have an immigration policy now. Just come on in, unless you're of Irish heritage and don't have a grandparent. If you're an Irish American or an English or a person of Irish extract, Australian, and you want to come live in Ireland, if your great grandmother was your only connection, you can't come. But everyone else, it's open doors. Open doors. We don't even have... And it was all designed by the same Green parties who have caused us to be dependent upon Russian gas by closing down our borders. See, there's nothing more evil and wicked than the Green Party. You've all seen my documentary on them. They're pure monsters. The only thing the Greens are interested in is the legalization of paedophilia and the destruction of national sovereignty. That's all they're interested in. The ultimate holy sacrament of the left as a whole is the legalization of sex with children. It's the only one they have left. They've gotten everything else. They've got everything else they've wanted. The one that they haven't got is the legalization of adults having sex with children. That's the one they want more than anything else, because once they have that, they'll have totally conquered humanity. They've come very close now. They're very close to the point where adults are boasting about having their children take a pharmacological experiment, a DNA experiment, and putting that's we're one step away from parents, and then my 4-year-old is non-gendered. We're one step away from parents hand these kinds of people. These are the same ones that have the Ukraine flag on their public. We're one step away from having these people boasting about their 7-year-old son is in a relationship with a 50-year-old man. We're on the cusp of that. And the Greens have been, since the Agenda 90 platform, have only been concerned with, as they said in Germany, Kindersex. Kindersex, sex with children. That was actually on their Agenda platform 90. Das Kindersex. Their Kindersex. That's what they wanted. Sexual relationships with children. That was at the top of their platform, along with disarmament of nukes and closing down of nuclear. They got everything. They closed down the coal plants in Germany. They closed down the nuke plants, and the same green politicians behind it are all involved in the gas pipeline, getting rich from Russia. They got all that, so they've got that, and they got everything else they want. Everything, men and women, men can marry men and women can marry. They can bop babies. You can have like all this stuff. The last one they don't have is the Kindersex. But they want it. They right now, if you're a member of the Green Party, be it known that you will be held accountable when that law happens. You will be, if you're a member of a Green Party, and the Greens, here in Ireland, they say we want to invest in transport, public transport. So do they build, underground railways? No. Do they build like really good bus systems? No. What do they do? Bicycle lanes. In a country where it's rainy and windy. What use in a country where it's rainy and windy is a bicycle lane? You can only use it. Everyone can't use it. And bicycle lanes are only great in urban areas. They're terrible in the countryside, in countries like Ireland, because you get blown around by the wheel unless you're training to be a cross-country cyclist. Why do you think Ireland has been so successful at cycling as a professional sport? Because our fucking cyclist athletes here are cycling in all kinds of weathers, up and down hills and mountains against the wind. That's why they're so good. That's why Ireland has produced so many top quality cyclists. Because it's the hardest climate to be cycling in. And yet, what are the Green Party doing? Building bike lanes everywhere. The only place to be bike lanes is in the immediate central urban areas where you're sheltered from the wind by buildings. And even then, you still need proper public transport. You still need your underground railways and your trams and all that stuff. They don't do that. Well, they don't do that. No, because they're sitting out there saying, how can we get legalization of paedophilia? When you see them all, like when Trump was elected, you had a march of all these horrible people, horrible middle class people, and organised by the Greens. And there they are talking about we can't be dealing with someone like that as president of the United States who treats women so like that. And here these guys all like behind the counters going, how can we bring the last element of Agenda 90 into fruition? And that's it. See, this is the thing. We should know these things, but we shouldn't. Once they've happened, they're very difficult ones to do. That's why I think just about everybody should have a vested interest now in stopping. I mean, this would be an abomination if this comes to pass. This is where all these PIE, the Paedophile Information Exchange in England, people say, whatever happened to them in the 80s? They went into the Green parties. Get knowledge of things. Don't be owned by the media. Take care of your immediate family and nip things in the bud before they happen. Don't waste your energy on foreign policy issues. Apathania doesn't matter. Sanguine Gnosis. Love yous all to bits. Take care.